Hey everyone, welcome back to the Family Office Success Podcast where we talk all things family office. Today we're going to have a conversation about the great transition that is coming up. And if you don't know what I mean by that, stick around. We're going to talk about what it is, how fast it's coming, and some things that if you are a family office, whether it be small or quite large, how you can work to get ahead of what is coming. I've been getting this call maybe once a month or so, and it goes something like this. Our family office director just announced that they are ready to retire, and we are all so excited for them. They've given us 3 months, which is incredibly generous, but we don't know the first place to start to figure out what this next step is going to look like. Can you help? And the answer is absolutely. But if we only have 3 months, or in some cases less, it's going to cost 3 times more, and it's going to take twice as long or 2 times longer than had we gotten this phone call a year ago or 2 years ago, and we were really able to prepare. So what is this great silver tsunami, this great transition that I am talking about? Well, it is the silver tsunami, and it hits family offices hard, and it's hitting hard right now. If you haven't already started feeling it, you're probably going to hear pretty quickly. What we're seeing in the market is this retirement wave. It's the first generation of really what can be considered for a lot of families this professional family office executive. It's probably the ones that were they were your first hire, and maybe that was back in the 70s or the 80s or maybe even the 90s. But they're ready to retire, whether you're ready for them to retire or not, or something has happened that would be similar to what we call a forced retirement, which is never good for anybody, quite frankly, but it does happen. And so we're seeing this wave of retirements / forced retirements in some cases. We're seeing a talent shortage. So younger professionals are choosing multifamily offices over single family offices for career growth. You can't exactly blame them, but that really leaves a big talent gap for the single family office. The other thing that we are seeing in the market is this, what we're calling this complexity trap. And what I mean by that is families have grown more and more complex, but their teams have really sometimes stayed very static. And sometimes what that can look like is what we call a tech deficit. So maybe you were running on software that was quite cutting edge in the 80s and 90s, but today is really not keeping up and therefore maybe not serving the family as best as it could be. Also, as complexity grows, if there hasn't been a true system in place to capture all of that, now we have a complex system that's not really a system. It's more just an aggregation of information, making it that much more complex to be able to transfer information, which leads me to the knowledge drain. I mean, you've got 20 plus years or more of institutional knowledge that is no longer going to be sitting in that seat. That's a big deal for families who have become quite, accustomed to how things run, and that honestly, they know how to run our family, and we don't have to worry about it. That's a wonderful place to be. But when that person is not there anymore, that leaves a really big gap. A couple of, scenarios or examples that we've come across are We had a $200 million roughly family, and the CFO retired with all the passwords in his head to all of the accounts. And so, yes, the family had access, but they hadn't been using it, which meant every password to every account, including the utilities and, the insurance and that was paid online, everything had to be reset and redone. Nobody's fault. Nobody really thought about it, but it happened. We've had another one where we were called to step in for a family office who had a forced retirement, is what I'm going to call that. And the situation was, it was filing cabinets everywhere. There was banker boxes everywhere, and that individual happened to have been the CFO. Another CFO, was running everything on paper for the most part, and he was just gone one day, which left as you can imagine, an enormous gap in information, because he's the one that supplied information to the tax folks, to the CPAs, to the accountants, to the to the family. He's the one that created their reports. He's the one that paid the bills. It was all there. Now, we didn't have password issues with that one because that wasn't really how he handled those payments. But nonetheless, it almost made it even more difficult because everything was written by check. And now we have to figure out whose signature authority. The family had to really step up. And it was a big deal for everyone involved. Let's just leave it at that. So let's talk about the paths forward. So we have this tsunami coming. We all know it's here. What are you going to do? So you've really got three ways that you can move forward. You can replace like for like, which would be the traditional approach. You hire a family office director for a family office director. You hire a CEO for a CEO, an executive assistant for an executive assistant, an accountant for an accountant. You can rebuild the institutional knowledge. You can, maintain your current structures and processes. This is getting harder, specifically because of that shrinking talent pool. I will tell you, if you haven't hired someone as a family office in a while, the cost has probably more than doubled, which in a lot of instances really kind of stops a family in their tracks because they don't really know what the current market is. The other thing is, if someone's new is coming into your family office, they want modern systems. They're not looking, they're not going to get excited about a legacy process. They're not going to get excited or really want to deal in a process that was set in the 70s, 80s, and 90s and never really updated because it's how we've always done it and that's how it works. It's just not where the talent is at right now. Even if you find someone who's been in the family office industry for many years, certainly they're going to be more familiar with the standard, how a family runs something. They're not going to be surprised, I suppose, is if they walk into a family office and it is older style processes. That person is also going to be incredibly expensive because they are going to be sought after. So if you want to keep older systems, not super interested in, figuring out if there's new and better ways to do things, new and better technology, you can probably find somebody to do that, but they might actually cost you more than if you took the step to find, to see what else is out there. I'll leave it at that. Additionally, because of the workforce we are in now, because of this current market, a lot of people want to work remote. They don't necessarily want to move to across the country, which means if you want someone who is going to come and sit in an office at a desk every single day, you're going to be limiting your talent pool to local resources. You may have someone absolutely amazing in your local vicinity. I hope you do. I think that's incredible. The likelihood, the more detailed into these, or the deeper you go into these different positions, that may be harder to find. So keeping in mind, if you're replacing like for like and you need someone sitting at a desk every day, that is absolutely your prerogative. Just know that you are taking what was a fairly limited pool and you're really just continuing to make it pretty small. When it can still make sense to replace like for like, keep that single family office feel with multiple people. If a family has $500 million and complexity, that could be a reason why you hire directly, though I would still say you can probably find someone who doesn't necessarily need to be sitting in an office all day, every day. And you can expand your outreach. If you've got a family with multiple branches, that would be a reason, because there really is enough work to keep those folks busy, not only to keep them busy, but also to give them some mobility. Because if the family is that large, you probably have multiple positions, and you could absolutely figure out a way to promote and to help those people grow into another position up. So that would be a reason for certain to replace like for like. Also, if you have a lot of direct investments that require a very dedicated oversight. So if your family tends to be the GP, not the LP, that might be a reason to keep some folks on what I would call staff, because you need them, and you need them much more consistently. So hire like for like. Absolutely. If that's what works for your family, do it. Second path, I would say, is the path of do nothing. This is, they say, some folks say not making a decision is not making a decision. Well, I would say not making a decision is making a decision. It just might not be the decision that is going to be useful and or the most helpful as you're going through this process. So I'm going to call this the do nothing approach, or sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich, if the neck applies, I suppose. So what happens here, and this is also true when the family is growing, when the complexity is growing, but the staff is not growing, the current staff, especially if they have been there for a long time and are maybe getting closer to retirement, or really they like things the way they are, that staff is going to get overwhelmed at some point. And, once family members start doing their own financial management, the, advisors kind of start working with family members directly, but the family invests as a family, or they have properties as a family, not necessarily individually. That is where you're going to get into critical deadlines getting missed, family governance being, put in a position where what was set up isn't what's being followed. This is actually probably one of the harder ones. It's the easiest to solve for overall. Or you lose, the other thing you do, you lose let's say you lose an accountant, and decide not to replace them, well, that work is still there. And now everybody else has to pick it up. Those are the kinds of things that a lot of times I see a family who has the kindest heart and they don't want to bother the other family office staff. And so they think, oh, you know what? I'll just take care of this. I can put that together. I'll call the insurance broker real quick. It's fine. I'll take care of it. I don't want to bother the staff. I know they're under enough pressure as it is. And you can see where the spider web now starts potentially unraveling when things have been set up, but in an effort to not bother the family office staff that's there because they're overwhelmed, it happens, and it's a real reason why this can cost families a lot of money in the short and the long term, because things aren't being tracked anymore, not in a way that it is visible or transparent to everyone. We've certainly seen relationships break down between siblings because financial transparency disappeared. And I know it sounds like I'm like really taking that to the extreme. But when a family has been close-knit and working together and someone has good intentions, but those good intentions don't get circled back around to the family office folks to keep up with in the systems, things happen. And so, the bigger the families are, the more complexity there is. These are real things that need to be taken into consideration. The third path, so first, replace like for like. Second, do nothing. Third is going to be a strategic partner or an outsourcing option. Obviously, this is where we sit in this continuum. Doesn't make it the right thing for every single family. It's just an option. What it looks like is a partner that's an established family office provider. Depending on what you need, I would suggest one that does more integration than just operates in a silo, but that's a podcast for another day. Someone who can maintain some of that family-specific governance and that decision-making so it's consistent and it's tracked, and documents are kept where they're supposed to be, and deadlines and timelines and all of that kind of stuff is tracked. You can outsource operations, you can outsource coordination, certainly administration, which, is record keeping, paying bills, coordination of the advisory team, integration of projects. That operations piece is kind of that keeping those projects going for a family. I always tell families, if you're coming from a place where you've had everybody in-house, and there was a time that was the most comfortable thing for you for whatever reason, doesn't matter, privacy, just want them your full attention, whatever it might have been. If you're coming from that model, it's important to really think about what is it you want from this, as you move into this new season, what is it that you actually want? And what you want and your family wants and needs is very likely going to be different from the 4 families that are sitting all around you. In fact, I can almost guarantee it. There's probably going to be some undercurrents of similar type services, but there's going to be something that's different and important to each of you that needs to be taken into account. And so, whenever you're talking to or thinking about, what do I insource, what do I outsource, well, what's Joe doing, and what are, what's Leah and Tom doing over there? They seem to have it together. Talk to them, but before you go and talk to providers, try and get a feel for what's really important. If it was really important for you that you were getting monthly accounting reports, or that you were getting cash flow with your capital calls in this very specific way, or cash flow was being managed in a specific way, or quite frankly, that you want someone sitting in an office or someone who's in town that can come and meet you, those are important things that are going to give you clarity, or some clarity on who to go and look for moving forward. You don't have to outsource it all. Keep what matters most in-house. Professionalize, and I'm gonna leave that a little bit broad at the moment. Professionalize the rest, and remember that if you are replacing in whatever path 1 or path 3, not 2, think about it from the perspective of it being an opportunity to maybe up-level some of the services that you have been getting, or change some of the things that you're like, gosh, if I could change anything, it would be, insert change here. It doesn't really matter what it is, but this doesn't have to be a life-stopping, big deal that now everybody in the family's like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? It doesn't have to be like that. So, what's the timing of this? When should you start planning? Like that segue? As soon as you know. That is literally when you should start planning. If you have folks who have been in your office for many, many years, and they seem like they might be getting to a point that they want to retire, but there's not really a succession plan in mind, that's a good time to get started. If you are feeling like there's friction, or sometimes what we call points of failure, potential points of failure, not that anything is failing right now, but potential points of failure, take a minute and think about everyone who's in your family office. And even if you're not a single family office, this still works. Take a minute and think about all of your advisory team. One by one, if your insert advisor name here was no longer available to you in the family, what information would you lose? And literally go down your list. If you look at this list, and I highly encourage you to write it down, just a couple of bullet points, what would you be missing if that person were no longer available to you? If that list is something that you look at any bullet point and think, oh, that would take a really long time to recreate, and I don't want to have to recreate it, that is your very glaring, brightly lit, flashing neon sign that you need bench. You need bench. So if you are a single family office and you don't have bench, it's something to consider. If you are a family that has an advisory team that you're managing and you still don't feel like you have bench, start looking around to see, or asking, hey, who at your office knows about our accounts? Who at your office knows about our family? You as the family shouldn't be the only one who can answer all of the questions about the history and why things are the way they are today. Of course, you have knowledge that no one else is ever going to have. But generally speaking, the rest of your advisor team really should know a lot about your family. Okay. If your technology hasn't been updated in 4 or 5 years, it's time. It's time to start looking at upgrading your technology. And maybe that means you just bring in consultants to teach your current staff how to work the new technology or how to get the most out of it, or just to set it up. Because sometimes starting from a blank page and or a blank screen when all of the options are available to you, it's too much. So hire a consultant, have them build it for you, have them teach people how to run it, and then, have them on call, pay them a retainer to be there. So when someone says, I just can't figure it out, call our consultant. It's no problem. It will keep your family office moving forward so much more smoothly. By the way, if you ran down that list and you yourself as the matriarch or the patriarch of this family, if you didn't list yourself, because the reality is, unless you have integration built into either your single family office or your advisory team, you're the integrator, which means that team is going to lose information when you are not there to provide it. You're kind of the most important piece. What does it look like if you're not there? Can all this keep running? Can the rest of the family keep running? Consider it. So those are going to be some things to consider that I would say should probably be piquing your interest to figure out what succession planning is going to look like. The other reason to get ahead of this is you're very likely, it's going to take longer to find a quality candidate who is going to match the family's personality and idiosyncrasies. We all have them. Every family has them. But this is a very personal role that we as a family office professionals play in the lives of our family members and our families. And so this is not I have a friend of a friend kind of hiring. Like, this is, you take your time on this and you want to get it as right as you can with the best information that you've got available to you at the time. Some others, if your team is overwhelmed, if reports aren't getting out on time and it's consistent, there's not like oh gosh, we closed on the ranch and that took 3 of our staff members away because we had to do, a bunch of coordination and that kind of stuff. Okay, that's a potential reason that books and records are running a little bit late this month. If it's a consistent, you've got another issue. So, whatever the standards are for your family office, and your staff, if they're not getting met, that's something to look into. And go with me on this journey. If you have had advisors since the beginning, they are wonderful, wonderful resources to your family. I have no doubt. But if you're doing the same thing, if you're a family that has grown a business, sold a business, you've created your wealth, and you're still working with these same advisors that now, when you have 100 million, 200 million, and up, if you're working with those same advisors, not always, but there's half a chance you have outgrown those advisors. And I say that with all the love for the folks that were with you in the beginning. They stuck with you in the beginning. They probably worked without getting paid just a whole lot, because they wanted to see your family succeed. That is an amazing group of human beings to have in your corner when you are growing your wealth. The thing I want you to consider is that there are professionals who deal in or who work inside of the family office niche, and they are there to serve this specific subset of families. And the reason I say that is because they're going to have access to things that other advisors aren't going to have access to. They're going to have different pricing, potentially. They are going to have seen families like yours go through very similar circumstances. Basically, they will have been around the block long enough to know that when you come to them and say, man, I can't get that California property insurance right, or I had to sign up for the FAIR plan, and then, I've also got this coverage over here, but I've got earthquake on over here. Oh yeah, okay, so we've also got the Florida house, we've got the place in New York. Like, you start adding these things up, and if you don't have an advisor, a true advisor who can oversee and who can go to bat for you, with an insurance carrier. Clearly, I'm using insurance as an example here. If you have multiple insurance brokers, but not an advisor who is seeing the bigger picture and who is reading the documents and knows where the devil is in those details, you're missing an opportunity to potentially have a better option for your family. So it's just something to keep in mind. A lot of advisors want to grow with a family, and a lot of them do. I'm a perfect example. I started with a family and started doing this work. I didn't know it had a name until someone said, oh, I think you do family office work. And I said, I don't know. Let me go back and Google that. Sure enough, the work had a name. And I was lucky enough to grow with that family. So there are advisors out there that can do this. The difference is I made a decision early on that I wanted to work with multiple families so I could get the broadest range of experience from them, and not be siloed with just a single family. When you don't have experiences of the same caliber, it's very difficult to do what I call seeing around corners and be able to say, you know what, I had another family with this exact same issue or a similar situation. Maybe it was a slightly different issue, but very similar. And we actually ran into an issue when a fire happened that wasn't catastrophic, but it was a big enough deal we needed the insurance, and we got caught on this little detail, and the family actually was really unhappy. How about I don't want that to happen. I'm going to go find the guy that knows how to, take a look at everything and knows those details. I'm not that person. That's not the lane that I play in. My job is to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right seats at the right time. Whatever that looks like for your family. But there are people who are specialists in those seats. And once you get to this level, you may not need to change your advisor, but you do need to consider if that advisor could use some, I'm going to call it up-leveling and leave it at that. So timing. The best time? Like 2 years. We're actually taking over, two family offices right now. One is, and by taking over, I mean transitioning. Sorry. We are transitioning 2 family offices right now. 2 very different family offices. And one of them, they did see this coming. And they were like, no one in the family really wants to step up. So we need to find, we need to change. We need to figure out something else. So are you interested? Absolutely. Are you kidding me? We have 2 years of runway for us to absorb everything in this family office staff's heads. And oh, by the way, while they're still very actively running your family office, we're absorbing. We are paying attention to how they're doing things. We're basically setting up, not 100%, but on some level, we're kind of setting up this parallel family office because the family wants new technology. They want things to be upgraded. They're not going to ask the current staff to do it. That's perfect. Continue doing what you're doing. We're going to learn what you're doing, and then we're going to apply that to what can be done with current systems. What can we automate? Where can we educate? And where can we make this really custom to your family? So that has been, we're 7 months in. That has been an amazing experience. And they're excited. They're happy to talk with us because they know that they know what the end goal is. And it's to support the family, but it's also to give them a succession plan, a retirement plan. So they're very happy. The other family office called, we started working with them last year, and we got the phone call because there was a forced retirement. And I assume everybody has picked up by what I mean when I say forced retirement. It was a forced retirement, and there was really no records. That person had information about the family. They'd worked for the family for almost 40 years. They knew everything about the family. They knew where everybody was going and coming and all the ins and outs and nooks and crannies, and it all went with them. And so what happened was we stepped in. It was a time of crisis for the family. That person literally wrote checks. To go back to my example earlier, this was a real one. That person wrote checks. They didn't have online access for a lot of things. They didn't, when the patriarch asked for how much does so-and-so owe and on this loan, and what is our payoff on that mortgage, what's our income, this person literally went and wrote it all down on a piece of paper and handed it across the desk to the patriarch. Amazing. I mean, I was impressed by, like, wow, like, you came up with that really quickly. You clearly have records somewhere. I have yet to figure out how they did it. I'm not exaggerating. We have gone back and we've had to do forensic accounting for the last several years. We've been working nonstop on digitizing any piece of paper that we could find, LLC agreements and foundation documents. I mean, I just am beside myself that the foundation documents are, you want to get in trouble real quick, don't keep your foundation records up to date. That's a good way. It's been a mess. And as a result, it is costing that family office not only stress, but this is expensive because I have people dedicated to working with that family office. So when do you start? As soon as you figure it out. Best laid, 18 to 24 months. You can lay out the plan. You can get everybody on board. Even if it's just hey, let's start conversations. Do it. All right. So if you're looking for a partnership model, what are the non-negotiables? I would argue they need to be independent. No product sales, no kickbacks, no conflicts of interest. Something to consider. If you are going to utilize services within an investment advisory firm, you need that broken down to understand what they're doing for you on both sides, both on the investment side and what I'm going to call the family office side. Ask about how they are going to communicate with the advisor, with your other advisors. Ask, what the standards of reporting are, not on the investment side, on the personal work side. What do those look like? Get reports. Are they readable? Do you like them? Will they customize them? Just ask questions. you need to know exactly what you're paying for. A bundled fee sounds fantastic on the outside looking in. Oh, I pay one fee and that takes care of everything. You need to know what you're paying for. And you need to understand if family office is what we would call a loss leader, which means they're doing it, but they're not actually getting paid for it. It's just sort of an extra. It can work. I just don't see it work well very often or for very long. So do your due diligence. They need to be able to scale with your needs, and they need to be using modern technology to integrate with your partners, your other advisors. It needs to be a good cultural fit. Communication style. They need to match your family's preference. Decision-making process needs to respect your family governance structure, whatever that is, even if it's mom makes the decisions on this and dad makes the decisions on this, that's fine, but it needs to be respected and their process needs to be flexible enough to adjust to your family. I'm going to go so far to say is their philosophy needs to align with your values. I will tell you, we are not the right fit for every single family, and that's okay. I try very hard to do what we call our right fit strategy. And, you learn from things you do in the past as an entrepreneur. But not everybody is a right fit for us. We are very strategic in what we do. We are standardized in our systems. We are flexible in our approach. So what that means is the underlying work that is done based on standard operating policies and procedures that my staff and I have created over time, because we know that means that we are not going to lose bills. Reports are going to be done on time, or there's going to be, a reason for it, for whatever that is. There's a process. How we give that to a family, very flexible. It's based on what you want. But those underlying systems, they are not recreated every single time. That's not good for us, and it's not good for our families. So, the general philosophy whenever you're talking to people, take the time to have a conversation about what you believe in strongly and what's really important to you. And make sure that you're aligned. If politics are incredibly important to you and you need to make sure that whoever is on the other end of the phone believes what you believe, bring it up. I hope that's not the case. Lots of good work happens all the time. But nonetheless, if that's important to you, it doesn't really matter. That's your prerogative, but you got to know it. Geographic presence obviously is another one. A lot of things. We are our home base is Austin, Texas, but we're a virtual firm. I have staff across the U.S. We have families across the U.S. And so, we don't have an office for you to come and sit down in. Our office is where you need us or want us to be. That is our office. So if it's important to you to be able to walk into an office somewhere, that is important to know going in. A couple of red flags to consider very quickly. If someone promises to do everything, here's the thing. Nobody does everything well. They just don't. You got to know. If a piece of software says we handle all of this for you, proceed with caution and a consultant, quite frankly. If they're pressuring you to move your relationships, if they're pressuring you to use preferred providers, if they can't give you references, there needs to be a succession plan. If you're going from no bench, go to somewhere that has bench. If someone's out on vacation or sick leave, that shouldn't stop things from happening, which means you need a firm that's got some bench there. If their technology looks like it's from the early 2000s, go ahead and go somewhere else. Let's see. What else do I want to tell you? Yes. So if you're making the transition, it really can be seamless. It is going to take some effort on everybody's part, more so on the consultant, but quite frankly, there's just only so many things that I can come up with on my own. Our families have to help us. Hopefully we make that as painless as possible, as any service provider is going to do. But do keep in mind that you are going to need to be an active participant as part of this. I always suggest you run parallel operations for as long as makes sense. To make sure that you can get what you need while the rest, your new team is getting up to speed, and start handing off some of those positions gradually. So current team members can see what their new roles may be. The new team members or the new providers can really get a feel for where the family's at and what their roles are going to be. So lastly, if you haven't maybe picked this up in this conversation yet, the cost of waiting versus the cost of planning. When a family comes to us in crisis mode and we need to put everything down to serve that family well in a way to get them through, those are higher fees. And it is not because we are trying to take advantage of something that has happened. It's because we're putting everything down to get the family through that crisis and get back to a stable state. The cost is just going to be higher than if you had started planning, if that was available to you, if you had started planning earlier, even if it was a few months, 4, 5, 6 months earlier. That cost is going to be, yes, spread out over a longer period of time, but there's a pretty good chance it's actually going to be less expensive than if you call us in a full crisis mode. It's just how it is. You're also looking, obviously, operational disruption because the new team has to get up and running. Any opportunities that come through during this time, you may or may not catch those. If the family's in crisis, there's a good chance all of your advisors know what's happening, but you still may be losing out. Just the stress and conflict within a family. It's hard enough when a family member passes. It is made 100 times worse when there is not a succession plan in place, and now someone has to step up and figure out how to make things happen, who's going to make decisions, who knows the code to the house that needs to get locked down, and who's going to start the phone tree to make sure everybody knows what their next steps are. I mean, it seems like such a simple thing. You have other things to worry about at that point. This shouldn't be one of them. Okay? That's truly, it hurts my heart when we see families in that situation, and it happens all the time. Again, look at it as an opportunity. If you're looking down that bullet point list and one of those people left or you weren't there, could the rest of the team operate for 90 days? Could the operations continue? Would investments continue? Would cash flow continue? These are the kinds of things that you really want to think about whenever you are looking at what are we going to do, just thinking about the next steps for planning. So what I will leave you with today is a little bit of homework, which is conduct a really honest assessment of your current situation. They say all progress starts by telling the truth, and certainly this is no exception. You don't have to show it to anybody, though I would suggest you should. You should share it, because somebody might have some ideas to help you move it forward, or, oh, I see we have a gap there. How can we bridge that gap in the short term? And then what's going to be our long-term plan? So employ the ideas from the people around you. And don't wait for a crisis to force your hand on this kind of work. The best time to plan any exit strategy, whether that exit is hopefully in a very long time or in the short term, the best time to plan it is when you don't actually have to plan it. So I hope that that gives you a little bit of an idea of A, what's coming, and B, some ideas on how to handle it. But it is definitely something to think about. If there's something we can do for you as you are looking at that list, even if it's just to give some referrals, we're more than happy to do so. Just click the contact us link below or on your show notes, and we'd love to chat and get you pointed in the right direction.